Hi everybody, Mr. Wiley here. Today's lesson and the lesson for this week is going to be a little bit different from what I got you doing last week. Last week you were doing a virtual field trip, you were gathering some data and then learning about a range of ways that you can manipulate that data. We were thinking about a little bit about sampling strategies in terms of the way you'd gather data. We were thinking about a technique you can use to actually turn data that is observational or descriptive into numbers. And we were using environmental quality surveys to do that. You learn a little bit about what we call bipolar techniques. I introduced you to a mapping technique on proportional symbols, and you were doing a little bit of work on proportional symbol mapping. So you're basically learning about how to gather data as well as how to present it and then analyze it. And that was actually a fair piece of work you did last week. This week, we're going to have a range of fun activities. Call them fun if you want. You might think, oh God, this is really boring. Hopefully not. Focused on manipulating data. And to do that, we're going to be using a spreadsheet. So you need to make sure you've opened up the assignment number 2, Discovering Data spreadsheet. And we're going to use that to explore data in a range of different ways. And what I suggest you do is, after I've gone through kind of each task, you'll find in the worksheet that goes with today's main lesson, you'll find a sort of activity that goes with it. So I suggest you sort of pause it at each step of the way, the lesson that I'm giving you right now, and follow the tasks. I'll have some other little kind of video tutorials, and I'll give you links to those that will help you answer some of the questions that go with this week's work. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start by looking at actually entering data into a spreadsheet in the first place. And how do you actually tabulate it? How do you set up your spreadsheet? And the way you want to do it is you want to think about data as being, you get data from a location, or you have a bit of data attached to something. And therefore, the location is the variable that you're going to put in the rows. And these are the rows 1 all the way down to 20 here. And then each variable you want to attach to that piece of data, you would put in the columns. And then there's a range of different things you can do with that. So let's just, for example, say we have visited 4 cities. And let's say we've gone to Perth, and we have gone to Stirling. And we have gone to Glasgow. And we have gone to Edinburgh. And so we've got 4 locations. What we now want to do is find out a piece of data about those 4 places. So, for example, we could find out what the population of each of them is. And once we found out that population, we would enter that into these particular cells. And that would be our first piece of data. We could then find something else about each place. We could, for example, find out the average alcohol consumption. In each one, assuming that data existed. We could find out the average wealth of a person, and we'll then go and find out the data on each of them. And all you would then do, I tend to do this anyway, is I like to just kind of organize my tables with hard lines like that. And then enter my data. And that would just be a table of data on 4 locations in the UK with a piece of information. And I could put that into my project if I was doing a project, and I probably would. I would, to be fair, probably then want to do something with it, maybe create a simple graph, maybe a bar to compare the population of these 4 places. But it in itself is data, and I could put that data in to present what I have discovered. So your first task today is going to be to create this table, which you will find in your spreadsheet. The only difference is you will find that I have removed all of this information, and I would ask you to find the population of these 4 places. I would encourage you to maybe do an additional 2 cities. So think of another 2 cities in Scotland and add them to your list and find the population. And then you are able to sort of compare which one is the largest to which is the smallest. I'd then like you just to copy that table and put it into your virtual jotter. And that's your first task. So you might want to pause now and go ahead and do that. Okay, you might have gone and completed that first simple little task. It won't have taken you very long. In this second task, we're just going to move it on a little bit and we're going to think a little bit about describing data. Now, normally when we've got a data set like I have here, and by the way, sorry to offend you, Rowan, but I have made you the smallest human being ever known to man at a mere 0.5 meters. What we often like to do with a data set is we like to then be able to analyze it in a little bit more detail. And by that, what I mean is we like to think of a data set in terms of, what's the average of a data set. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the average, or what you'll know from National 5 Maths is the mean. And then I'll explore the difference between mean and the median. And I'll also talk a little bit about the mode. Now, in Google Sheets, you can find out the mean quite easily for any area set of data. So if I want to find out what is the average height of my advanced higher geography class, well, I know that Bella's the tallest at 2 meters in height and Rowan's the smallest at a mere 50 centimeters. All I need to do is I have to go into a cell, that's what this is, which I want my data to go in, or my answer to go in. I can then hit this little function button up here, which is all of the math tools that come with these spreadsheets. And I will choose average, which is another word for the mean. Click on it. And what it's now going to do is you'll see over here, it's put in the equal sign. The word average is in capitals. And now it wants me to select the data that I want to average. So if I click on Olivia and drag my mouse down to Rowan, I will see I've selected cells B2 to B9, and those are those cells there. So letter B, 2 to number 9. And if I hit the enter button on my keyboard, there's my average, 1.55 meters. If I want to round that up or down, I can click this button and it will round it up to 1 decimal place. If I'd like to move it in the other direction, I can click it that way and it will give me more decimal places. So we'll just keep it at 1 decimal place, and we can see that the average student in my advanced high geography class is 1.6. Now, why would we want to know the mean? Well, sometimes we might just want to be able to have a kind of quick summary of this class. We might have another advanced higher, maybe an advanced high chemistry class, find out the average height of the students in that class, and therefore we might compare the average of advanced high geographers with advanced higher chemists to see if there's a difference, for example. Or we might want to compare each person in the class to this average. So we can see that Bella, for example, is 0.4 meters higher than the average student, and that poor old Rowan is 1.1 meters smaller than the average student. Right, so that's the mean. Let's think a little bit about the median. Now, the median is a slightly different statistic. It often is very similar to the mean, but it's actually the middle value of the data set. Now, in a data set of 8 people, the middle value actually would fall between the 4th and the 5th, or the 4.5 value. Okay. In an odd data set, so if we'd had 9 people, for example, that's dead easy. The median is just the 5th highest if I was to rank order everybody. So if I was to rank order these people, it would be the 5th highest. Okay. So once again, this little function over here can do that for me. This time I have to go down to all, and I just scroll down till I get to median. And there we go. And then once, just like I did last time, I start on Olivia, drag down, be careful not to select the median. So there we are, my 8 people, I've dragged it down. B2 to B9 are selected, so those are the ones I want to find the median for. Hit the enter button on my keyboard again, and there we have the median. And we find out it's exactly the same as the mean. So no problem there. The median will not always be the same as the mean. And when we get into slightly more advanced data analysis, you'll see that there is the median and is sometimes used, and the mean is sometimes used in data sets. Right, last one. I don't find the mode particularly useful piece of data, but it does have a purpose. The mode is the most commonly or frequently occurring value in a data set. And in geography, that can be important. If we had a data set maybe of, well, let's just take this class, and that 5 people were all exactly the same height, 5 out of 8 people were the same height. Now, that's statistically unusual to have 5 people out of a group of 8 being exactly the same height. And therefore, if I noticed that the mode appeared, that there was one value appearing frequently a lot of the time in a data set, then I would want to comment on that. If I was looking at my data, I'd want to know why are so many values all the same. Most of the time, though, the mode itself is not all that useful. But if we want to find out the mode, we just want to go to the All button. We scroll down. Gone past it there, and there's the mode there. Most commonly occurring value in a data set. Just like I did last time, I drag it down my 8 pupils. So cells B2 to 9 are selected again, hit the enter on my keyboard, and 1.6 again. So 1.6 appears the most in this data set, and if we actually look, yes, it does. It also probably explains why our mean and our median are also 1.6, because we have one value appearing quite a few times, which is affecting the mean. And obviously in a small data set, it's more likely that if you have a few values the same, that you're going to end up with an average like those values. The bigger the data set is, the less likely that's going to happen. And we've got 8 people here, so it's a very small data set. Right, so I've explored the mean, the median, the mode. What I'd like you to do is calculate the mean, the median, the mode for this data set. I'm going to delete these out, and I'm actually going to change the data around here in this lesson. And when you open up your actual assignment 2, you'll see some different values. And I would like you to work out the mean, median, mode, cut and paste that table, and then answer a little question I've got on mean, median, and mode, which involves you using your virtual textbook. So what you might want to do is just pause now and complete those tasks. Okay, in this next part of the lesson, we are going to something really cool that Google Sheets can do. And it's actually the only piece of software that I found that does this really well. We're going to create our own customized map, Choropleth map, that looks a little bit like you can see here on the screen. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, Choropleth mapping is a specific mapping technique, which you're going to find I've got some questions for you to do on in a second, that shows data presented by the level of color, and the higher the value, the darker that represents. So obviously Africa is split into countries, and we can see the darker colors, for example, Zimbabwe here, have much higher values, in this case fertility rate, than Sudan, for example, with a lighter color at 3.1. And what I've actually done is I've mapped every country in Africa in this picture that I got from a website. And here's all of the countries. And I've mapped the fertility rate of each country. So that's the average number of children a woman has in her life. And what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to show you how to create a very similar map that looks like this, but it's going to be for median age, which we've just looked at median early on in today's lesson. So that's the age, the middle age of a population in that country. And we can see that for many of these countries, it's actually really quite low, the median age. And then what I'm going to ask you to do at the end of this is create your own Choropleth map for urban population, which we can see here. And you will have to then copy that map into your virtual jotter and answer some questions about Choropleth mapping as specifically as a technique, just like you had to do last week for proportional symbols maps. This is obviously a different technique, and it's got some really positive reasons for using it. It's very visual, it's very easy to interpret, but there are also some flaws to it as a mapping technique. Okay, so here's the steps for creating your own Choropleth map. You first have to set out your data, and if it's Google Sheets, it's going to have to be your main variable is going to have to be countries of the world. You can then choose to map any other variable you wish for that country. You start by actually creating your chart in the first place. So to create a quick chart, you can either go through the insert chart route, or you can just hit on the little button over here. And what it will do is it will automatically bring up the chart function. There we go. And it'll also bring up the chart editor over here on the right hand side of your screen. First thing you want to do is you actually want to change from its defaulting a scatter, and it's just automatically picked up 2 of your variables. And we are going to do scroll all the way down. So instead of going scatter, I'd like you to pick this one here, a geochart, which in this case happens to be Choropleth Mapping. Now, at this point, you'll see it's brought up a completely blank map with nothing on it. So what we now need to do is select our variables. Now, to do that, what we want to do is down here in the setup, you want to click on this little button here, and you want to delete out this, and you want to select your 2 data ranges. So my first data range is going to be the countries. So I'm going to start with Nigeria, and then I'm just going to scroll down to St. Helena, which is an island in the middle Atlantic. And that's my first data range. It's cell A2 to A59. So I could just type in A2 colon A59, and it would automatically select that for me. Okay. To do another data range, let's add another data range. This time I want to do the median age. Okay. Now the median age appears in column F, and the first country I want is Nigeria, so that would be F2. The last one I want is St. Helena, which is all the way down at F59. So I can actually just type in F2 colon F59, and it's going to select all of the median, all of the countries in those cells. So that's me picked up my data. I'm going to hit OK. And what it's now doing is it's generating that map, but it's showing me the whole world. Now I just want to focus in on Africa. So my next step is to go over to my chart editor. And if, by the way, if chart editors, somehow you've closed it down, you can click on your map and hit on the 3 buttons. And if you click on them and hit edit chart, it will automatically bring back your chart editor. Okay. I want to click on the customize section of my geochart, and I can play around with the chart style. I'd encourage you, if you've got a little bit of time, you can change your background color, which would be the color of the oceans. You can change your chart borders. You can change your fonts. You can do little bits of playing around with your chart style if you want. I'm at the moment mainly interested in the geo toggle on the customize button. I want to change my region just to Africa, so I cut out the rest of the world. So I'm going to click Africa, and there we go. I can now see the median age for all my African countries, from Libya to Algeria and all of the way down where countries have data. Now, one of the things about Choropleth mapping is you have to be consistent in your color. And you'll see I've got 2 different colors here. And normally your minimum, as in your lowest values, should generally be a very light color. So I might go for a very light pink for my low values. My middle range color, therefore, is going to be maybe a slightly darker color, like this one here. And my high range, I'm going to want as a kind of very dark red or bold red, if red was the color scheme I was choosing. So I'm using red as my color, and I'm just basically going lighter to show the countries with lower values and darker to show the countries with higher values. Okay, and you're therefore sticking with one color palette. And that's quite important in Choropleth mapping. There should only ever be one color, and it should be shades of color. You might choose for your no values to make them significantly different, maybe gray or black. So countries where you don't have any data for are emphasized in your map. In this case, because I'm doing all of the countries, you've got them all showing without that no value. Okay, and that in essence is your Choropleth map. What you would do is you would copy your Choropleth map into whatever you wanted. Unfortunately, it doesn't automatically give you a title, so you would have to type a title above your map. It also doesn't tell you what these numbers are, so you'd probably have to type below your map what these are. These are median age. So Africa has median ages ranging from the lowest 15 to the highest of 37. It's obviously a very young continent. If you go into the main worksheet for today, you find a little tutorial, some questions about Choropleth maps, and there is a specific question I'm asking about describing the pattern you can see in this map, and then explaining reasons for variations. In this case, in urban populations, because the task that I'm going to ask you to do is create your own map, just like I've done there, but I'd like you to do it for the urban population of Africa, to highlight where in what areas of Africa are populations the most urban, and in which areas of Africa are populations the least urban. Okay, so once you've completed that, you might want to come back to this part of the lesson and then go on to your final part, which is a challenge, and there will be a reward for this challenge. Obviously, I can't give you the reward right now, but it will be an edible reward for the person that is most creative on the final data challenge in this week's lesson. Okay, in this final part of today's lesson, I'm going to set you a little challenge, a scatter graph challenge. Now, I'm going to give a reward for this. I'm going to give something like why don't we say a chocolate orange is going to be the reward to the one of you that finds the most interesting piece of data to go along with GDP per capita and create a scatter graph. So let me just talk a little bit about how you're going to do this, and how I'm going to judge the winner of this particular reward. And then when we're all back in class, we can present the winner with their chocolate orange. I've got here all of the countries of Europe, okay, and there are quite a few. Now you can, if you wish, when doing this, delete some of these. You can get maybe rid of some of the smaller ones, like all of these countries here are actually relatively small in population. And if you want to, you can maybe just focus on maybe the top 15 or 20 and delete the rest. It's up to you. I'm not going to ask you to do every single European country. Next thing I'm going to want you to do is find the wealth or the GDP per capita of the countries that you've selected. Now, when you find this data, it's likely going to be, like 26,343 or whatever. I'll make your life easy. Just round it up to the nearest thousand, and that's what you need to type in. So 26,000, for example. And now it's got to be the per capita. So it's not the total GDP of the country, but the actual per person. That's what the per capita means. Then what I would like to do is to find a second piece of data on each of these countries. And this is where the challenge is. I would like you to find your second variable. It can be whatever you want. It could be something really quite boring, like the life expectancy of each of these countries, or the fertility rate. It could be something like that. Or you could try to find an unusual statistic on each of these countries, like the number of guinea pigs per thousand in the population. Now, I'm not saying that anyone has actually got that data, but there will be, and there is, a huge amount of data out there on countries. And what I'm going to give the prize for is the person who finds the most unusual piece of data. But it's got to be a piece of data that might or potentially could be affected by the average wealth of those citizens. So basically, does the richest country in Europe, or the country with the average richest per person, which has the highest GDP per capita, have maybe the highest or lowest of this other variable? Now, it doesn't have to, but in order to see whether there is a relationship, the next step you're going to have to do is create a scatter graph using Google Sheets. Now, in last week's lesson, I showed you how to create a scatter graph. You've got to select the two variables that you want, the data for those two variables. You actually want to select the column headers, so you'll need to put whatever this variable here is, like life expectancy, for example. You'd type that there. You'd select that, drag it down for all your countries that you've got data for, and then you would hit the little insert chart button. And once that came up, you would then select the scatter graph function, which is just there. Now, because we don't actually have any data, you're not going to see any scatter graph. The only other thing you want to do is add a line of best fit. or a trend line, which you have to hit the customize function and scroll down and find where the little box is that you have to put a tick in order to add a trend line. And that's you completed your tasks for this week. There's a little question that goes with that particular task, which will be asking you to describe the pattern in your data, whether it's a positive, a negative relationship, whether you think it's a strong positive or negative, or whether you think there's no relationship at all. You'll be asked to copy your graph into your virtual jotter. So that's today's lesson, looking at data, learning about a range of different methods used to discover data. Next week's lesson is going to be going back to a virtual field trip, and I'm going to get you to do another little bit of field work and gather some data like we did in the first week. And we're just going to gradually make progress through a range of skills. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you in the weekly meetings we're having on Wednesdays. If you can't make it, don't worry. You can send me an email and I'll send you a link to our meeting. But if you're there, obviously it's the opportunity to ask me some questions.